Greetings to everyone on the call. My name is Jessica Troney and I'm the head of the UN Environment Programme's Climate Change Adaptation Unit. I'm pleased to welcome you today to this event where we will share emerging lessons from the first few months of the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, AFCIA, and explore best practices in fostering and scaling up innovation in adaptation technologies. The AFCIA programme was launched last year by the Adaptation Fund to foster innovation in adaptation practices in vulnerable countries. The Climate Technology Centre and Network, or CTCN, which is hosted by UNEP together with UNDP, was selected to administer the accelerator. During today's session, we will hear opening remarks from institutional leaders regarding the accelerator. Then my CTCN colleagues will provide an overview of AFCIA implementation thus far and some of the lessons emerging from a global perspective, as well as from the Africa region specifically. Finally, we'll engage in a discussion on what enabling factors are helping to foster innovation in adaptation technologies. And so we have a list of eminent speakers for our opening session. Our first speaker is Dr. Rose Muebasa, who is the director of CTCN and brings 20 years of experience providing policy advice on a wide range of climate change, environment, and sustainable development issues. She has previously served as Chief Natural Resources Officer at the African Development Bank and held leadership positions within the UN Development Programme. Dr. Muebasa, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. I will just give a few opening remarks, really, that will consist of thanking our institutional partners in this AFCIA project. I'll start with UNEP, our home and the host of the technology mechanism of the UNFCCC, for your support, not only in operationalizing the CTCN, but also in the important role you play in supporting us in resource mobilization. And AFCIA is one of those efforts where we work together to raise resources for the trust fund of the technology mechanism that is established in UNEP. So I want to thank UNEP really, and for Tim, who is the director, I will introduce him, for that partnership and the support that we get from the entire team in UNEP. And then, of course, I want to thank the Adaptation Fund and its head, Miko, our very good friend and partner in this. As institutional partners, I think I'll just let you know briefly. Last week, we had the 17th meeting of the advisory board of the CTCN. Our vice chair, Mr. Omedi, will be talking today, giving the keynote. And it was very clear in the advisory board that the demand for the CTCN services is growing exponentially, and that our ability to respond to the needs of the 161 countries to which member states have designated national entities for us is only growing. So we'll have to think of very innovative and creative ways to service the needs of these countries. Our AFCIA program has generated a lot of interest from the member states that we serve, but I'll just give you a sense of how in demand our countries are, how in demand our services are from the countries. So in 2020 alone, I will tell you about 2020 because last week, as I said, our advisory board that represents member states from Annex and non-Annex 1 countries was able to approve our report for the year. And in that year alone, we served 75 countries, 75 new requests from these countries, and we implemented 101 technical assistances, including 48 that were completely new. And because we are in Africa, I will tell you that 41% of these requests were from Africa. Africa continues to be the greatest recipient of our services, but also to present the highest demand for requests. So we are very grateful, one, that the Africa group of negotiators who negotiate during the UNFCCC and the technology mechanism, that they are participating in this event to listen to the work we do and also to give us additional guidance on how we can service them in the work that we continue to do. And lastly, I want to thank the UNFCCC through the chair or the vice chair of the advisory board who represents the non-Annex 1 countries. In the process, Mr. Omedi, you'll introduce him, because through their guidance, the member states make sure that our services continue to be demand-driven and that they are contributing directly to our mandate as provided in Article 10 of the Paris Agreement. So I want to thank you very much, Jessica, and to hand over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Muebasa. Thank you for those opening words. And now we go to Tim Christopherson, who is the head of the Nature for Climate branch at UNEP in Nairobi. He coordinates the work of the branch, including UNEP's role within the UN RED program and the UN Decade for Restoration. He previously worked for the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and the Danish Ministry of the Environment, as well as the European Commission. Welcome, Tim, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and thank you, Rose, and colleagues at the Climate Technology Center Network for the invitation to offer opening words at this Lessons Learned webinar. UNEP's approach to adaptation includes nature as an essential component and part of a country's mix of measures in the adaptation strategy. So our job is to provide support on developing policy and planning frameworks that incorporate nature and ecosystem services for adaptation. UNEP has a current portfolio of ecosystem-based adaptation projects of over $300 million. We've implemented over 50 projects on climate change adaptation at global, regional, and national levels for more than 50 countries. And projects are usually of an amount between 5 and 20 million each. Our approach is always to find the best available solution on the cutting edge of science, policy, and practice, and then scale up and help others replicate these findings. But still, these investments are a very small proportion of the overall adaptation needs. The Adaptation Gap Report that was launched in January 2021 found that while we are gathering pace in adaptation, we are still losing the vital race to adapt. 2020 was, in addition to COVID-19, as you all know, also a year of intensifying climate impacts. Floods, droughts, storms, wildfires affected over 50 million people. And these impacts will only worsen. As UNEP's Emissions Gap Report, our other flagship on climate change, illustrated in 2020, we're not doing enough to cut greenhouse gas emissions, and we need a deep decarbonization of our economies. At the same time, climate change is upon us, so we need to adapt, and we need to adapt faster and more systematically than we're doing to date. The Adaptation Gap Report highlighted that adaptation is expected to cost between $140 billion to $300 billion annually by 2030, and about twice as much by 2050. So the only way to minimize those costs, losses, and damages is to win the race to mitigate and to adapt. So UNEP is proud to be in partnership with the Climate Technology Center and Network, with Rose and her team, and in partnership with this Technology Accelerator program. We've had 2 rounds of proposals. I think one of them is closing today, in fact. So these were highly successful. In light of the success of this program, I hope we can expand this and issue new calls soon. And in the meantime, if you're interested in small grants about adaptation, also visit our global ecosystem-based adaptation facility, a 20 million euro small grants program, which we run with funding from the German International Climate Initiative and in partnership with ICN. And of course, join us in becoming Generation Restoration for the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration that launches on the 5th of June. Thank you very much. Jessica, back over to you.
Thank you, Tim. Wonderful to hear about all the other work that's going on as a background to this Accelerator program. And now we go to Mr. Mikko Olikainen. He has served as the manager of the Adaptation Fund Board Secretariat since April 2016. Mikko joined the Adaptation Fund Board Secretariat in 2009. Before taking on managerial duties, he functioned in various technical capacities, most recently as a senior climate change specialist, helping to build the fund's portfolio of projects and programs. Prior to joining the Secretariat, Mikko worked in the World Bank Carbon Finance Unit as a carbon finance specialist and deal manager, particularly on forest-related projects in the Biocarbon Fund. Welcome, Mikko. Over to you, please, for welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and good afternoon, all. Thank you for the invitation to speak here. It's a great pleasure. It's very pertinent to talk about the emerging lessons from AFCIA in the Africa region. As Jessica mentioned, AFCIA was announced by the Adaptation Fund with its partners CTCN, UNEP and UNDP at the COP25 conference in Madrid in December 2019 and was launched just about a half year ago in November of last year. There have been a lot of excitement around AFCIA for a good reason. It's a great initiative and an excellent complement to the Adaptation Fund's other work. Just to say a few words about the Adaptation Fund, we are one of the longest operating funds that is dedicated to supporting adaptation to climate change and building resilience. We've been financing projects since 2010, and as of now, the Adaptation Fund has supported over 120 concrete projects covering over 100 countries with more than $830 million in funding. And Africa is a crucial region for the Adaptation Fund, and about 1/3 of the portfolio has been allocated to Africa. We've been supporting innovation throughout our history by pioneering new finance models such as direct access and enhanced direct access, and providing services that help empower national institutions such as the fund's readiness program. The Adaptation Fund Innovation Facility, which is a bit broader than AFCIA, emerged from the fund's strategy, which essentially recognized that we as a global community are unfortunately not going to achieve adaptation in the best way by simply replicating or gradually improving past adaptation practice, because we don't have enough time, climate change is catching up on us too fast, and we don't have enough resources. Again, the adaptation gap report produced by UNEP that the team also referred to, which is an excellent product, has shown that even though the finance for adaptation is increasing globally, the needs are increasing even more rapidly, and the gap or shortfall in funding is growing. That is one of the key reasons why we need to accelerate, encourage, and enable innovation for effective long-term adaptation to climate change. This approach is aligned closely with the Paris Climate Agreement, which calls innovation critical for an effective global response to climate change. The Innovation Facility offers small and large grants through 3 different windows. First, small grants through direct access modality, which makes available financing up to $250,000 to national implementing entities accredited to the fund. So far, our board has approved 4 innovation small grants for a total amount of about $1 million. For example, the Innovation Small Grant in Armenia is bringing an existing technology and concept, online digital education, to a new context of upskilling youth on climate adaptation in Armenia. In Chile, another grant is helping to develop urban points for water distribution that can function under a drought catastrophe and are easily replicable elsewhere. Second, large innovation projects is a new window which was approved at our most recent board meeting, and which provides grants of up to $5 million to the fund's accredited implementing entities, including national, regional, and multilateral entities. It was just launched 3 weeks ago, so we haven't received any project proposals through it yet. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly for today's agenda, AFCIA, which is the focus of this webinar, has been designed to push the envelope even more by opening new opportunities for communities, associations, businesses, young innovators, civil society, local governments, and others. AFCIA aims to test innovative adaptation practices and technologies that further foster and accelerate innovation in adaptation to help meet the enormity and speed of climate change in vulnerable communities, as well as the compounding challenges from COVID-19, while generating an effective evidence base that can lead to scale-up opportunities and transformational change. We're very hopeful that many of the activities that are supported by AFCIA, that are today's innovation, will turn out to be successful and will be tomorrow's mainstream adaptation, so that we together improve the positive impact that we have on the resilience of vulnerable people in developing countries. On this note, I'd like to wish you a successful webinar and hope that through AFCIA, countries, including in Africa, are further able to bridge adaptation gaps and mitigate impacts on vulnerable communities and ecosystems through innovative and cross-cutting solutions. So thank you very much, and I wish you a very successful webinar and also success in implementing AFCIA in Africa. Thank you. Over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Mikko, for those inspirational words. And our last speaker in this session to give a keynote address is Mr. Tanguy Gahuma. He is a national of Gabon and he's chair of the African Group of Negotiators on Climate Change. He is also the special advisor to the President of the Republic of Gabon and permanent secretary to the National Climate Change Council. He is also the national designated authority to the Green Climate Fund for Gabon. Unfortunately, Mr. Gahuma couldn't be with us today, but we have a recording of his keynote address. So over to the organizer to put that on.
Jessica, his recording just came in time. I'm still downloading it. So okay. Can we ask Mr. Omedi Zura to speak, and then in the meantime it would be downloaded and then we can play that recording. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Okay, not to worry. So then whilst we're sorting out technological issues, we go to the next session on scene setting, adaptation priorities in Africa. Mr. Omedi Jura will give this introduction. He is an engineer, a Kenyan national, a negotiator for Kenya and Africa in the UNFCCC. He is the lead coordinator in climate negotiation on technology development and transfer for Africa. He's worked for the Kenyan government for more than 36 years. He's a member of various engineering institutions in Kenya, notably the Institute of Engineers of Kenya and the Kenya Society for Biological, Environmental and Agricultural Engineers, and the Engineers Board of Kenya. He has recently been nominated as the Vice Chair of the Advisory Board of CTCN. Engineer Omedi Moses, over to you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and greetings, participants. I will request that you allow me to shut my camera because I can already feel, and I'm not even sure whether you can hear me well because of the internet outrage. There's times when it goes pulling. So thank you.
We can hear you.
Okay. My name has been said already. I'm grateful to the organizers of this event, and I hope that it will add value to the collective process of response to climate change with a focus on the important role of the Adaptation Fund to Africa. And thank you very much for all those who have already said something, because it's in line with my thinking as well. I can give my personal perspectives based on the facts that I have, and you may find examples from Kenya relevant and useful as well. Feel free to look up Kenya's policy documents and plans, many of which are available in the website. I'm also happy that something was just approved the other day, this month, for Kenya on learning by the Adaptation Fund, administered by NEMA of Kenya. Now, one obvious fact is that Adaptation is a compelling priority for Africa in its fight against climate change, as the disastrous outcomes of the impact of climate change continue to become more frequent and increasingly greater in magnitude here in Africa. We live here and we feel it. I'll give you one example of what we have captured in the National Climate Change Action Plan for Kenya, and I will quote from it directly. It says, "The increasing intensity and magnitude of weather-related disasters in Kenya aggravates conflicts across a variety of dependents, including with wild animals, mostly over natural resources, and contributes to security threats. Damages by flood and drought are estimated to create a long-term fiscal liability equivalent to up to 2.8% of the GDP each year. Specifically, the estimated damage from floods are about 5.5% of the GDP every 7 years, while drought-related account for 8% of GDP every 5-year cycle. This is a serious scenario, and that's why in the Kenya Climate Change Action Plan for the 5 years that is current, the following have been prioritized. The first is disaster risk management. It's in order of priority as well. And the second is food and nutrition security. Then the third is water and the blue economy, followed by forestry, wildlife, and tourism. Among the 7 priorities that have been put there, the rest I may not really go through now. We know that most other developing countries worldwide and in Africa prioritize water and agriculture sectors in their technology needs assessment and their subsequent technology action plans. I knew this when we looked at those later after they have been submitted, long after, when I was a member of the TEC. The nature and extent of climate actions planned for by African countries is becoming manifest as they prepare their country-driven action plans, like in the case of Kenya now, national adaptation plans, and as they revise their nationally determined contributions and their plans and strategies for both local and national action. And if you look at all these, you realize that adaptation remains outstandingly a priority. Many of the 54 countries that are in Africa are in the category of least developed countries. They must all continue developing. However, this must only happen sustainably through a low carbon, environmentally safe and climate resilient pathway. This we've been singing all along, but it is the reality that we must practice as well. As such, there must be a built-in resilience enhancement in the development actions of these countries. Resilient communities and systems must be part and parcel of Africa's development, for Africa to contribute significantly to ensuring that the objectives of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement are met. And at the same time, be certain that their gains and benefits of climate action and development in general are not suddenly lost due to climate change, which is a big risk. It is in this context I wish to point out and subsequently appeal that when selecting projects to be funded, consideration should be based on the larger picture and the comprehensive consideration of the expected outcomes, including the adaptation outcomes that we are looking for. And with the low carbon component as an added advantage, although we look at it as a very imperative component, really, and not to disqualify a proposal as a mitigation rather than adaptation skewed. That would be short-sighted. The CTCN could assist in this assessment and make appropriate recommendations, and I know we can really move forward with this very well. And this should come to the attention of those doing the selections. There is nothing purely as an adaptation project, and that is what qualifies. That is my view. Secondly, I consider the Adaptation Fund to be a very important provision for Africa. And it is my wish that an exclusive, predictable amount of not less than 5 million USD of this fund could be set aside for Africa. In the meantime, you've heard how the demand is high, and I know about it as well. And that this should progressively grow as the fund also grows. From what I heard from our speaker is that about a third goes to Africa at the moment, but that is really below what Africa expects given the demand that we have. So dear colleagues, dear participants, you have all said it, adaptation and resilience building action in Africa is urgent. Demand for technical assistance indicative of this, what we get through the CTCN, and it's very high and keeps on increasing and will increase still, because every country feels they have a responsibility through their NDCs to deliver. Africa really needs your support. Please kindly avail it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those words, Mr. Jura. Sobering indeed, and we soldier on and we do what needs to be done to help Africa move forward with its development in a sustainable way. So thank you for those words. I think we are to go back to our keynote address now from Mr. Gahuma. Is it ready to be screened?
Yes, Jessica, I'm sharing my screen,
okay,
and putting on the video. Please let me know if the voice is clear and is audible. Aha.
We can see it, but we cannot hear the recording. Sorry, Rajiv. Something is not right. I cannot hear anything.
Colleagues, can you help me on this thing?
Yes, Rajiv, could you perhaps could you perhaps unplug your not use your headphones and try it again? Perhaps it works like this.
No, I'm afraid not, Rajiv. The image is very clear, but not the sound. What I would suggest, Rajiv, is that we move on to the next session, and perhaps you can ask somebody else to share the keynote address after the next session. How does that sound?
Yes. Yes, we'll try to do that. We will try to do that.
Okay. In that case, if you can stop sharing your screen. Okay. So in that case, let's go on to the next session, which is the presentation of the concepts that have been submitted to AFCIA to date for the Africa region. And for that, I'm handing over to Ms. Nadege Trosselier, who is the Climate Technology Specialist for the Africa region at CTCN. Welcome, Ms. Trosselier, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Welcome everybody. Thank you, Valentin. Welcome everyone, and thank you for being with us today. I hope you are all safe and healthy. We will start this presentation about the concept notes that were received through AFCIA first call for projects for Africa mainly. Next slide, please. This is a regional deep dive mainly for Africa, but we will also have a look at other things. Please, next slide. This is the content we will analyze. So first, a global overview of the different applications we have received, not only for Africa, but globally. And then we will go into the selection of concept notes for Africa. We will answer a couple of questions. So which projects were selected? What happened to project ideas which were eligible for AFCIA but not selected? Which project ideas were deemed not eligible for AFCIA, and can project ideas deemed not eligible for AFCIA be converted into CTCN technical assistance? And then a quick overview of the next steps. Next slides, please. Next slides, please. So the first call for application started in November 2020 and ended in January 2021. During this first call, we received 71 applications from 27 countries. About 48% are from LDCs and 11% from SIDS. To provide a more deeper overview, we received applications from 7 countries based in Asia Pacific, 3 countries from LAC, and 17 countries from Africa. From these 71 applications, 47 were deemed eligible and were evaluated. Next slide, please. From these 47 applications deemed eligible, 18 applications were from Asia Pacific, 3 from LAC, and 26 from Africa. Major adaptation sectors were agriculture, rural development, and food security, but we also received applications on water management, urban development, coastal zone management, human health, for example. Of these 47 eligible applications, 5 were selected, 2 in Asia Pacific, 2 in Africa, and 1 in Latin America and Caribbean. 3 elements were considered: the innovative and transformative character of the technology proposed, the kind of technology proposed, hard or soft, and the potential for replication of the technology. Next slide, please. What are the common factors for success? The problem needs to be well defined and clearly linked to climate change. The application needs to contribute to national adaptation priorities. The activities are expected to be aligned with the CTCN mandate. The application proposed to test and scale up innovative technologies in their respective context. There is a potential for replication. And if it is in a SID or LDC country, it will get a priority. Just as a reminder, a project proponent cannot be the implementer of the technical assistance as per the mandate and the rules of the CTCN. Next slide, please. So what are the concept notes that were selected during this first call for project. Looking specifically at Africa, we have received for this first call 41 applications from 17 countries. 26 applications were deemed eligible and 2 were selected. Next slide, please. One of the final projects is in Burundi with the objective to benchmark, select, and deploy a low-cost, climate-resilient, easily replicable, scalable, and mobile flood barrier to prevent damages from flooding and ensure water availability in times of drought in the Empa commune of Burundi. The response plan of this TA has been drafted, approved, and signed by the NDE and NDA, and the bidding process to select the network partner of the CTCN will soon be initiated. The activities of this project include a flood and drought risk assessment, the deployment of a mobile flood barrier in a pilot area, which will be selected by the local stakeholder, the definition of a monitoring and evaluation framework, the formulation of a roadmap to scale up the technology, and of course, the elaboration of detailed manuals in different languages and various trainings to the future users of the technology on its use and maintenance, as well as demonstration activities with the citizens of the commune. Next slide, please. For the other selected TA, we are still under discussions with Chad and Liberia. So for Chad, the project is about integrating water collection and water management system. For Liberia, it's about upscaling lowland rice production to improve food security through improved solar-powered irrigation practices. For Chad, the project's overall objective is to deploy and evaluate an integrated water collection and water management system to women and rural communities in rural regions. For Liberia, is to identify appropriate irrigation and solar water pumping technologies for system of rice intensification in one lowland county of Liberia. After several rounds of discussions with the NDE and project proponent of the Chad project, this application might not be deemed eligible because it does focus more on a hardware implementation request, while the application for Liberia is more aligned with the scope of the CTCN as it aims at conducting technical assessments of an innovative and transformative technology. Next slide, please. So what are the reasons for the application to be considered or to be deemed not eligible? First, a problem of eligibility criteria. So if the application is coming from a non-eligible country, for example, this cannot be selected. So the country should not have a national implementing entity with the adaptation fund. Then the country needs to have an NDE. Then there is what we look for. We look for innovative and transformative technologies, clearly linked to national priorities for adaptation responses. So linked to the NDC, to the NAP, to the climate change strategy. And we look for impact potential. Then there is a scope. The application that are more related to mitigation rather than adaptation will not be deemed eligible under the AFCIA. If the application is not clearly linked to climate change, even though it may be some environmental or a sustainable development project, if it is a poorly defined problem, not specifically designed, if there is a large focus on hardware implementation, and the activity proposed mainly focused on procurement or capacity building, when they are not aimed at developing or testing innovative solutions to build resilience, which can lead to transformative impact. Next slide, please. Is it possible to convert applications into CTCN technical assistance? Yes, it is possible to convert an application into CTCN technical assistance. And the CTCN is ready to work with the countries and the project proponent. Just as a reminder, the technical assistance will be eligible and prioritized by the CTCN if they have clear and positive benefit in mitigating or adapting to the negative effect of climate change, if the request is in line with national strategies and plans, if the request enhances endogenous capacities, if the request has the potential for replication or scaling up at national, regional, or international level, if it promotes and demonstrates social and economic benefits, and if it demonstrates gender equality and empowerment of vulnerable groups, including women and youth. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Thank you. So what are the next steps for the selected project ideas? The two first steps in gray in the graph have been closed. They refer to the call for projects and the selection of the applications. We are now in the third block, during which the CTCN, along with the countries and project proponents, formulate the response plan. Then, the response plans are evaluated, approved, and signed by the NDE and the project proponents, and a bidding process is launched by the CTCN to select a network partner who will be in charge of the implementation of the TA. Next slide, please. The second call for projects was closed last Friday on April 30th. But no worries, new call will soon be launched. So please, if you have an idea, reach out to us and we will be pleased to work by your side on the preparation of your application. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. And please, if you have questions, feel free to write them in the chat in English or in French, and we will try to attend all of them. I know that we have already received a couple of questions by emails. Rajiv, I would like to hand over to you to provide some clarification on this question that we have received previous to this webinar. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Nadej. But before I go to the questions which were asked through emails, there is a question in the chat box which I would like to address. And the question is on the commercial viability of the technology or the solution which is considered when the projects are being selected. At the selection stage, we are looking for innovative ideas. We are looking for innovative technologies and innovative practices. At the selection stage, we are not looking at the commercial viability of the technologies, solutions, or the request which has been asked for. It would definitely come into picture when we start implementing or when we do the feasibility assessment. At that stage, we will consider that commercial viability, but during the selection stage, we are looking for new and new innovative ideas. So that was one question. I'm trying to find out the question which came from one of the parties. And the question was with regards to the IP rights, who holds them? Because we are developing and we are supporting innovative technologies, and who would be the holder of the IP rights? The means to the best of my understanding, but Rose can come in, but to the best of my understanding, since this project is being supported through the adaptation fund, by the adaptation fund through UNEP CTCN, so UNEP would hold the IP rights. However, being a UN organization means it's not restricted. If there is a need, anyone can use it after due acknowledgement to UNEP. But Rose or Jessica, if they have any additional things to add on it, please feel free to come in and add on to what I just mentioned. There was a question on who can implement it. The implementing, first of all, Nadej has very clearly mentioned in her presentation that the that the project proponent cannot be an implementer. So it cannot be that you are proposing a request for technical assistance and then you want to implement it either through direct engagement with the CTCN or through a bidding contract. So if you are a project proponent, you cannot implement the project because it would be considered as a conflict of interest. Well, as of now, that is all from my side, and I don't see any other questions, but you are free to send us an email with additional questions if there are any. I would like to give one more try on trying to play the webinar and see if it play the video and see if it works out. If it does not, this whole recording would be shared by with all the participants, and it would be put on our website for your easy access.
Greeting to all participants.
Can you hear it?
To the UNEP emission gap report, despite a brief dip,
yes, we can.
by COVID-19 pandemic, the world is still heading for a temperature rise.
But we can't see it, Rajiv.
Century. Far beyond the Paris Agreement goals of limiting global warming
you see
to
it now?
well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursuing 1.5
No.
degrees. While Africa has contributed negligibly to changing
Rajiv,
climate,
I think you're not sharing your screen.
or 3% of global emissions, it stands out disproportionately as the most vulnerable.
Rajiv, as you're sharing your screen, there are a couple of questions. We have one from Eco Consult in Germany, and they are asking how many applications did we expect to receive? The eligible countries for AFCIA are as follows: 30 LDCs, 25 seeds, the small island developing seeds, and then 51 other developing countries. So it is a large number of countries. I'm going to ask my colleagues, maybe Nadej and Valentin online, to share with you so that you can know exactly, but we have a very precise number of countries that are serviced. So that is the number of countries we expect to receive requests from. And then just to reiterate on the point of the technologies that emerge out of this support, the resources for the CTCN are global public goods, as are the entities that provide them. These are resources provided by member states. So all the knowledge that we produce is public goods. It's readily available on our website, and the accreditation goes to the UN as the entity that is mandated to manage this process. But these are public goods and they are made available to everyone as such. Of course, you must give credit to the UN Environment Program as the host for these technologies and innovations, but they are public goods.
I think perhaps we should go to the next session, Rajiv, which is about the private sector, an expert view on innovative adaptation technologies. Can we move on to the next session?
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. I think in the interest of the time, we let's move on to the next session. Hi, everyone. This session is divided into three parts. Into two parts, I would say. The first part is a panel discussion wherein we have three speakers. I would introduce the speakers and then I would ask questions to the speakers one by one. The second part of this session is a kind of a case study presentation from three institutions, which two of them are from the private sector in Israel, and one is an international or intergovernmental institution which is helping and implementing a technical assistance for the CTCN. In these case studies and in these presentations, you will get ideas of what kind of innovative technologies the countries can propose or request for technical assistance. And you can ask further questions on the applicability of technologies in the African context. The first speaker which I would like to introduce is Samuel Altersu. He works with Deloitte and Tomasu Finance Advisory Services. He is the vice president and is based in Japan. Samuel is leading all advisory related to climate change and climate finance. Samuel has extensive experience in providing advisory services related to building up climate actions and identifying relevant and bankable climate projects. So Samuel, the question to you is, in your opinion, what should developing country in Africa do to enhance innovation, specifically when it comes to adaptation technologies? The floor is yours.
Right. Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you for the introduction and for the very interesting question. So, we have quite extensive experience in both supporting climate change solutions and also with innovation. And it's not really only related to adaptation, but what we see in innovation and what is needed to actually enhance innovation is support in two types. The first one is probably in terms of finding the solutions, mainly that something could be addressed through acceleration programs or incubation programs, for example, that could be supported by governments. That's the first thing. The second one is probably seed funding. And this is probably what is tried to do here. So it's actually seed funding is very important, especially for private sector-led solutions and for adaptation, because those might not be bankable right away, but with time and some support, they could get bankable. We have seen this approach in some countries in Africa already, for example, in Kenya, where there is some seed funding available for innovation, and also an acceleration program, which was supported by the World Bank before, focused on climate solutions. So I'll stop here, but I think those two main parts are really the main important themes for Africa right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. You brought out a very important point. And the first point is finding solutions. Once you have the solutions, then you can structure the seed funding and you can structure a bankable proposal around it. Now, in finding solutions, how can innovation be helpful? Means what should be the process of finding the solutions? As you understand and you know that there are many countries which are undertaking technology need assessments. There are countries and there are several programs. There are NDC programs wherein countries are undertaking NDCs, wherein they are trying to define or structure their needs. But this kind of a solution requires, a in-depth understanding of the process. Right. So what do you see, how can innovation come out of this?
Okay, so let's take it another way. I agree with you. Actually, the first step in probably finding the solution is actually understanding the problem. Sometimes you would have the broad issue identified, mainly that that might be the consequence of the issue that is identified, but not the real cause. And what we see in a lot of programs is that you're actually trying to address the cause rather than the consequence. So when you identify the cause, that is made easier. And I think this process is actually currently done by CTCN and other partners through the technology needs assessment, for example, where our starting point is not only looking at the solutions, but really more first looking at, okay, what is the problem? And what can we do to address it? And to one problem in one country, you might not be able to translate the same solution in another one. So it's really important to look at the local context, also if it's socially acceptable, and really what are the root causes of the symptoms of your issue. And that's what's going to bring the solution, in my opinion.
Thank you, Samuel, because you have raised a very important point of engaging the local and what we also call the grassroots innovation or grassroots level innovation, wherein you need to involve the communities and the most vulnerable groups to identify this solution, and also mix it up with the local knowledge which they have to find innovative solutions. Thank you very much for your answer, Samuel. My next question is to Omar Saleh. Omar is the managing director of a company called Zypher Consulting based in Netherlands. Zypher Consulting offers innovative climate adaptation solutions with a distinct focus on climate-induced flooding and drought. They offer advanced flood analysis software, as well as they are the holders of award-winning mobile flood barrier called Slam Dam. Now, Omar, my question to you, specifically when you are working in Africa, you are a consulting group, you are working in Africa on various products. What are the barriers do you face as a private sector in implementing innovative adaptation technologies?
Yeah, thank you very much for your introduction. Well, an example is a project we're doing currently in Nigeria, Lagos. The first remark we got was, okay, it's a very innovative product, very interesting, but have you done a project before in Africa? They want to see evidence that the system works. So that is why we're doing now a small scale project in Nigeria. And hopefully from there, we will scale up in other countries as well. So that is I would say the first barrier. They want to see proof that the system works. The second barrier, I would say, is that they want to see a quantification of the realized benefits, because we can say, well, we have a mobile flood barrier, we deploy it, but at the end of the day, they want to know, what does it bring me? What kind of benefits do I get in terms of financial damage prevention or improvement in health and economy? So that is something we do as well. We try to quantify that and to give countries across Africa an idea of what our solution can bring them.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Omar. Sorry. Thank you, Omar. The first point which you raised is very pertinent point. Means there is a deficiency in the trust, in the confidence, and they want a proof. And this is where many international organizations, many agencies like CTCN, UNEP, UNDP, many development agencies, they are trying to pilot, demonstrate, and in fact, this adaptation program itself is trying to focus on these innovative adaptation technologies so that it can be showcased. But the second point which you raised on benefits is a very important point which you are raising, specifically in terms of adaptation technologies and the systems and the process, which crudely translates into specifically for adaptation, you have to translate into what kind of losses would happen or what kind of damages would happen and what this technology is going to do to prevent that loss and damage kind of a thing. And this is a very burning topic which is happening, and many negotiators are, or many countries are negotiating on this topic, even in the UNFCCC. My follow-up question to you would be that, okay, it's very good that as a private sector, you're trying to ascertain these, but how you can scale it up? What role do you see for yourself to scale up these kind of innovative technologies, taking into account, all the questions which are asked by the parties?
Yeah, thank you. So the way I see it, or what our approach is we've developed a methodology to measure the benefits, the envisioned benefits. So we do an analysis before we actually do the project itself, and that analysis we would discuss it with the client or the country and say, look, we can deploy our solution in a specific region, and this will you'll realize probably these benefits. That way we hope to mobilize funds quite quickly, because then the client has a good idea of what the investment would bring him. I think that in doing so, we can speed up the process to scale up across all over Africa. And the second, what we're doing now is we're actually also making software to automatically, that the client automatically sees what the envisioned benefits will be from deploying our solution. So I think in making that visible for the client, I think that would speed up the process to mobilize funds, get approvals, and then scale up our solution across Africa.
Thank you, Omar. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting topic, and it's a very interesting thing. And probably the last question as a follow-up, I would like to ask: these solutions and these projections which you are doing specifically in terms of the benefits, would it be on a small scale local area, or it can be extrapolated to a larger region, specifically in terms of benefits?
So we can do it both, but normally we do it quite relatively small scale. So the one project I mentioned in Lagos, Nigeria, it's for a certain community where we, first off, we do a flood risk analysis. We use 3DI software where you can see how the water will flow and how a flood would occur once per year, once per 25 years, once per 100 years. And then, so for that small community, we are now already exploring then what would be the benefits then for that community in terms of preventing loss to infrastructure, housing. But we can do it a little bit broader as well. So we can do it on a regional level. That's possible as well. It's a bit more complex. It's more time consuming. I would prefer to do it like a bit small scale. Then you have more accurate data, and it's yeah, I think it's more accurate. So I prefer the smaller scale solutions.
Thank you, Omar, for your replies. My third question would be to Kevin Enongi. Kevin is a senior analyst on climate change and low carbon development, and is the regional director for the Central Africa region at FOCAPS. FOCAPS is a climate change and sustainability consulting firm with a mission to advance low carbon and climate resilient development solutions, investments, and lifestyles. FOCAPS is a Canadian company. So Kevin, the question to you would be, in Africa, we have mix of countries and there are many LDCs in Africa. And focusing on the LDCs, and also specifically because you are working in Central Africa region where there are many LDCs face a lot of problems in accessing finance for adaptation. Is access to finance a major challenge, or there are other issues too? What's your experience on this?
Thank you very much, Rajiv, for the introduction and for your question. Yeah, So for the African continent as a whole, we have quite an array of finances that are directed towards climate change adaptation. So we can talk about 3 different levels: multilateral funds, such as GCF, Adaptation Fund, the Least Developed Country Fund, and the Special Climate Change Fund operated by the Global Environmental Facility. We also have financing coming from bilateral donors, such as the UK, Germany, EU, and other countries. We also have climate finance at the national level, which is coming from public and private sources. So with regards to the challenges faced by LDCs, least developed countries in Africa, from my experience, I think the issue is all about accessing the finances, because they exist. There are some climate finance sources exist at the international level as well as the national level in the different countries, but the challenges are related to these countries actually accessing some of these funds. So I'll be highlighting a number of challenges. To begin with, assessing multilateral funds, that is funds from the international level, like the GCF, the Adaptation Fund. So the first challenge I want to highlight is the lack of technical capacity of countries to be able to come up with projects that align with the requirements of some of these climate financiers. Take it for the case of the Green Climate Fund. For an adaptation project to successfully go through the funding cycle of the GCF, the country or the accredited entity has to show a very clear case for adaptation. So they have to present a very strong case for adaptation, otherwise known as a climate rationale. Otherwise, the projects which they are developing will sound or will look more like traditional developmental projects and not climate change projects, and this will not go through the fund's approval. The second challenge I would like to highlight is the limited engagement of the private sector in the climate change adaptation landscape. We find that at the international level, there are some initiatives geared towards enhancing private sector financing of climate change adaptation and mitigation in developing countries. I can cite the private sector facility of the Green Climate Fund, which is out to actually de-risk climate change financing, so that private sector actors can actually play a key role in financing climate actions in the different developing countries in Africa. However, we find out that the private sector is very little. They are not really engaged in the climate finance landscape in African countries, and this makes it impossible for them to be able to mobilize resources from funding like the GCF, which has a private sector facility. A third and very important challenge is the fact that most of these African countries and the least developed countries actually lack national implementing entities which are accredited by the fund. For instance, I will take the case of the Adaptation Fund. The Adaptation Fund launched the direct access approach to enable national governments to be able to access finances directly from the fund and to be able to implement climate change adaptation projects which are compatible to their development priorities. However, for national institutions to be able to get accreditation from the Adaptation Fund, they must have to adhere to the fiduciary standards of the fund. So most of the institutions in Africa are quite weak, and they cannot actually adhere to these fiduciary standards set by the Adaptation Fund. So we find a situation where 15 out of 54 African states have a national implemented entity. So the other countries are left with the option of using international accredited entities to be able to access funding. And sometimes a country may come up with a project which actually matches or aligns with the needs, the developmental needs of the country, but it may not be appealing to an accredited entity. So in that case, that project will end up not being submitted to the fund for consideration. The same thing holds for the Green Climate Fund, which also have a direct access entity, but countries actually lack national entities that can access this. So looking at the national landscape, So we have two sources, private and public. So the first challenge is related to the fact that there is no provision of climate funding in national budget lines. So while most of these countries have developed their national adaptation plans, but within their budgetary sessions for every year, we don't normally see a budget line dedicated for climate change adaptation actions in the country. So that is a key challenge at the national level. There is also a weak business case for adaptation projects. So unlike mitigation projects, which show a very good case for return on investment, we found out that most adaptation projects which are developed in African states does not actually show a very good case for returns on investment. So this actually serves as a disincentive for private sector actors to come in and finance some of these initiatives. I can also cite the issue of low collaboration that exists between the private sector and the government. This is a key challenge which is predominant in the Central African countries. We are currently implementing a technology needs assessment for one of the countries in Central Africa, and it has been quite a challenge for us to bring on board the private sector into the process. This goes to show along with that there is quite a lack of collaboration that exists between the private sector and the national governments, and this tends to deter the private sector from taking up some of these climate change adaptation initiatives and for financing them. The last challenge I would like to mention is related to lack of capacity within private sector companies. So most of these companies don't actually see the need, or they don't actually see how climate change adaptation or climate change mitigation actually serves as an opportunity for them to invest. So most times they see climate change adaptation projects as very high risk projects, and in the absence of favorable enabling conditions, which will actually de-risk some of these projects, the private sector actors will not want to invest in climate change adaptation in these countries. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Kevin. Means you brought out a lot of points. Definitely, from the experience of the CTCN, we see that enabling conditions are a must in countries. There is a need for a better public-private partnership and engagement of the private sector, a greater need of aggregation of markets, because most of the LDCs, the markets are very small. So there's a need to harmonize the policies and aggregate the markets. You also brought an important point of which points that, you know, there is international finance available, but the countries do not have the capacity to access this finance because of a variety of reasons. I'm not trying to put you in a spot, but I would like to take your reaction here, because one of our earlier speakers, Samuel, he spoke about the need and the capacity of the countries to find solutions. Do you think that is also a major barrier? Because once you identify a solution, once you identify a technology to be implemented, then you start thinking about the financing, or you think that ready-made tailored solutions are there, it just needs to be applied in the LDCs?
Okay, thanks so much, Rajiv, for that. I think that regarding technology use, we have quite a number of technologies which exist at the international level, and with financings, those technologies could be deployed in some of these countries. But there's a key challenge with regards to that, because most often than not, most of these countries will prefer technologies which are adapted to the local context, something which can work for their case, because as we all know, climate change adaptation is highly context specific. So it doesn't just suffice that technology exists at the international level and there's finances available for deploying these technologies to these countries. But most of these countries will want to see something that will work in their context. And the fact that something will maybe in one African country does not necessarily mean it's going to work in another. So there's need for the project proponents or the person trying to deploy the technologies to really convince the national governments or to try to do some sort of a pilot test to demonstrate the adaptation potential of that particular technology. That will go a long way, maybe to enhance acceptability of a particular technology within the African context.
Thank you. Thank you all colleagues. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Samuel, and thank you, Omar, for your replies. I hope we get some key messages out of this, and as CTCN will make efforts to try to fill the gaps in the future, looking at the replies which you have given. So the next part of the session here is the case study presentation by the three speakers. Now I would like to invite Mr. Simcha Shore, the CEO of Agro Scout, to deliver his presentation. Sim, can you put on the presentation and share your screen, or you want me to do that?
I'll share. I'll share.
Right. Perfect.
But you need to give me a...
Yeah, you have the rights.
You know, it says you can't. It says IQ. Let me try once again. No, you need to give me permission. You need to make me manager or something. Someone else is sharing. Someone else is sharing? That's what it says.
No, can you share it now?
Let me see. Yes, I can.
Right, thank you.
Everyone see the presentation?
Yes, we can see the presentation.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sim. I'm talking to you from the north of Israel, not far from Nazareth, the Sea of Galilee, Haifa. And I'd like to talk to you about our journey in global farming. So I spent many years in defense, and after I retired, I wanted to take all of that know-how to the agricultural world, but mainly bringing those know-hows in a way that the 500 million farmers of this world, including the farmers in Africa, the smaller farmers, the ones that don't have as much as the large grower in North America or someplace else, everything that we can now with the technology. AgroScout is a software company, so pretty much everyone with a smartphone. I know not every farmer has a smartphone, but we see more and more smartphones around the world, obviously also in Africa. And our journey is about agronomy. It's about plant doctors. It's about bringing the finest agronomy to every farmer and to every plant all the globe. We focus on field crops. So anything that we eat pretty much is less than 10 crops: wheat, corn, rice, potatoes. Less than 10 crops is pretty much what all our farmers grow. The smallest ones that are just growing maybe less than a hectare behind their house need and don't get that plant doctor. And that causes this loss of the crop to disease and pests. This is global numbers by the FAO. And in some places in the world, it's only 5%. The reason it's only 5% is because of plant doctors, agronomists that walk the fields, that are able to tell the farmers how to better use the chemicals or less use the chemicals, which reduces this loss. The loss here means less crop at the end of the season. The smaller the farmer, it's more meaningful. If a small farmer is growing half the amount of another farmer, it's his livelihood, and it's also more food for the community. The second issue here that we're dealing with is sustainability, that we talked about quite a bit in the session today, is that since World War II, we use more and more chemicals because they're cheaper, they're more accessible, but it doesn't really help us on this issue. So it's about bringing precision agriculture to every plant, not to every field, and to like in people medicine, not everyone has access to the best. We want to bring the best to every plant through every farmer. And the way we're able to do this is using cloud computing and internet and smartphones and small commercial drones, if it's someone that has a few hectares already or someone's a service provider for those hectares. And it's about empowering those farmers, those scouts, those service providers to the small farmers to be able to grow more. So we use off-the-shelf commercial technology, mainly the smartphone. If they're a bit bigger farmer, maybe a few hectares already, or a service provider that's working with several farms, like the chemical distributor, then he can fly around with this small commercial drone. Cost about $1,000 everywhere in Africa. I know that's a lot. Yet service providers like the chemical company can have this one, and that can serve a whole area of farmers or a whole commune. And the smartphones, it's enough to have one smartphone to look at quite a bit of plants. We don't need any internet in the field. I say the majority of those billion hectares of field crops around the world, there isn't internet. And only when they get back to their house, to the farm, to somewhere with some connectivity, we need very little connectivity. It goes up into the cloud, and that's where we look at the images, and then we generate back a recommendation or a report to the farmer, whoever is dealing with treating that field. This already can be also on the desktop in an office, but it can also be on a simple phone, just a message, not even a picture, just telling him, and that doesn't even need to be a smartphone. Yeah, so we are working globally, and we started to work now in Ethiopia and in Ghana, and we're already working in South Africa. And pretty much anyone, anywhere can use it as long as they have a smartphone. The core of what we're doing is we're training algorithms to look at endless images. And we're taking the best practice of the best agronomists and making the machine do that. So we've collected data for the last 4 years on multiple crops, multiple regions, including Africa, on many field crops, potatoes, corn, peanuts, wheat, starting with rice as well. It'll pretty much work on any field crop. And we've taught the algorithms, like a smart agronomist, how to detect things. And what that gives us, our product is showing the problems on the plant, and working with the plant protection companies, we can also add the recommendations. And those recommendations will reduce the amount of chemicals the farmer is using on that acre or hectare of crop, which means if we're using less chemicals, it means there's less production of that chemical, less transferring that liter of chemical, and less implementing it on that plant. A lot of the farmers just have it on a thing on their back, so they're exposed to those chemicals. And think of all that carbon outputs from that production and from that moving those chemicals. So if we can reduce the chemicals that are used globally and in Africa on the field crops, then that will reduce the carbon impact of that farming. We've done major projects already with small farmers and bigger farmers all over Latin America, mainly in Mexico and Brazil, but also all over. Some of these farmers have just very few areas of crops. Some of them are a bit bigger. Similarly, in the south of Israel, this is actually in potatoes. Another example here is of tomatoes. Tomatoes are usually smaller fields, smaller growers. This one is in Italy. But I want to talk about this project that we're doing now in Mexico. In Mexico, we are working with the smallest farmers. They have maybe 100 or 200 square meters of land, very little water, and very little access to agronomy. And the way we're empowering them is they get to use the mobile app for free. They get an agronomist that visits them once a week. So each agronomist is visiting maybe 30, 40 farmers and instructing them. But during the week or during the 2 weeks until he comes back again, they're engaged through the mobile app. And we are also sending both of them insights in weather, in problems that appear in that area, a certain disease or certain problem that started to appear in other farmers in that same area. The second thing, we actually give them a biogas system, which they can put the manure from any livestock that they have in the system. It gives them cooking gas, but it's also creating quite a bit of organic fertilizer, which they get to use on those fields. And the rest they sell to us in this case. And all of that goes out to a bigger grower. And we're already starting out with 200 farmers there. That's already 50,000 liters of organic fertilizer instead of manufacturing 50,000 liters of chemical, which also reduces the impact of carbon in that area. In the use case that we did in potatoes, in this case in North America, we've shown that we do early detection of disease and pests. Because the farmer's out there, he sees a problem, he doesn't know what it is, but if he takes that image and when he gets to the internet, it goes up, then we're able to tell him what that is. Doing that process gives early detection to that farmer, and that allows them to treat that crop earlier and with less chemical, reducing all that impact of chemicals that we spoke of before. I think my time is up, so thank you again for this opportunity, and we're happy to do these countryside projects anywhere in Africa. I'm happy to answer any questions if now or afterwards, and thank you.
Thank you, Sim. It's very wonderful to note that through the use of drone pictures, you are able to identify, what's happening with the crops, what are the kind of pests. Definitely, it's a great potential to increase the increase the productivity of in the farming sector. And it's just a thought which came to my mind. Means nowadays, one of the applications which we are getting on our iPhones is that you take it to a leaf, you take a photo of the leaf, and they are able to tell you what is wrong and what you need to do. But this is what you are doing on a very large scale, because a farmer can't take his phone to every leaf. But what you do, that using an unmanned aerial vehicle, you can cover a large area, and you are able to predict that and find a solution. Wonderful technology. I'm not going to ask any more questions, because I leave it to the participants to put the questions in the chat box which they may like to ask you. But while we are in the process of collecting the questions, I would like to invite the second speaker, again from Israel, Yuri. The floor is yours. Please introduce yourself and share your screen. If you are not, I'm giving you rights to share the screen. Oh yes, you can share the screen, definitely.
Great. And everyone can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Awesome. So I'll get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Uri Rosenzweig. I'm the VP product at CTRI. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone for having me today. It's an honor to share with you today about CTRI, our experiences working with farmers and working in the ag tech industry for several years now. At CTRI, as our name implies, we are entirely focused, dedicated, and borderline obsessed with our planet's greatest gift, trees. We believe that trees are our most precious resource, both for food security and environmental sustainability. Because of that, we are a group of over 150 individuals who spend most of our waking hours discovering, innovating ways to bring a whole new level of efficiency and optimization to the way we utilize trees to sustain our population and planet. We are supported by some of the greatest visionaries and partners in the industry to help bring these ambitions to fruition. Optimizing trees would be a noble pursuit under any circumstances, but specifically in the times and contexts we live in, with resource depletion, growing populations, and extreme weather, We have foregone any privilege we might have had in the past to rely on tradition and intuition to secure the future of our planet's food supply and environment. Our food supply chain is fragile. We saw that very, very clearly this past year during COVID. And this incredibly volatile yet critical life source relies on an analog system that has yet to be properly digitized or transmitted to the needs of our current times. At C-Tree, we believe that the unique key that will open a whole new level of optimization for trees is by focusing on each and every tree individually. We enable the agricultural revolution of Ag 4.0 with its promises of increased profitability and sustainability, with a shift in the granularity and scale of data that is collected and utilized in order to be at the heart of that disruption. Because of that, we digitize each and every tree, millions and millions of trees around the world, providing each one a unique identification that allows us to analyze it and track its tree health, its size, stress, yields, and ultimately overall profitability across several different crops. Today, the level of variability in a grove between one tree and another is so great that there are tremendous amounts of precious resources that are being wasted because our technologies cannot cater to the needs of those trees. At C-Tree, we are the enabler, the data source that will flow for a whole new level of efficiency based on our per tree intelligence. We leverage our unique per tree data to create actionable insights for growers that bring direct and tangible savings and increased profits. Firstly, we streamline information across the farm to allow automation of tasks and management, creating incredible leaps in farming efficiency. Two, we track tree health over time. We'll dive into this in just a moment to alert and provide management recommendations for the trees as well as their fruit. Third, we provide early identification of critical diseases that require farming intervention to reduce spread and the pressure. And finally, the ability to manage at higher levels of granularity to make the most of every single tree with our tree-centric big data platform. So how do we do it? We believe in a multi-layered approach to data collection through campaigns. The first layer is from the air, where we combine the most advanced aerial imagery platforms, including military drones, aircrafts, and satellites with multispectral and RGB sensors. We then link that perspective with our ground sensing capabilities that include imagery vehicles, IoT sensors, and weather stations, which stitch together a holistic view and understanding of the trees, the water, the soil, the grove, and the farm overall. We are strong believers that artificial intelligence needs to be combined with human intelligence to support and facilitate emerging technologies to ensure that our customers are on the cutting edge of technology, but not on the bleeding edge. By utilizing ground scouts and pulling all of the data and algorithms together, we are able to truly build a unique, powerful, and credible AI engine for every tree farmer to utilize in their tool belt. To provide these insights to growers, we equip them with a digitized platform of their trees where they can see both macro and micro intelligence from general seasonal issues to a farm level, down to a grove level, all the way down to each and every individual tree. Our AR-powered algorithms analyze symptoms of stress for each and every tree and provide an objective tree health score that the grower uses to improve his farming decisions. These tree health symptoms provide growers with the data they need to improve critical decisions like irrigation, fertilization, spraying, and farming logistics. In addition to tree health, we're also able to measure the geometry of the tree, providing growers with recommendations for pruning, topping, and canopy management that are critical for maintaining a healthy farm at scale. Finally, we're also able to estimate the yield of every tree to support the many business, operational, and farming decisions that require hyper-accurate yield information at different resolutions early in the season. These are just a few use cases that are unlocked as soon as AI is fused with multi-layered data collection to power the next generation of farming. As a member of the ag tech company I'm extremely optimistic regarding the future of food and farming. As day in and day out, I see some of the greatest and brightest minds in the world working to solve these incredibly difficult challenges around climate, food, and environment. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Yuri, for an excellent presentation. You know, we have been hearing about waste management systems. We have been hearing about many management systems, and here comes the farm management system and a complete package which the farmers can use to increase the yield productivity. But I have a very simple question to you. There may be some other questions which would be coming from the participants, but my question to you is very simple. If we take up just one parameter, for example, we take up just an irrigation as a parameter of the water needs of the crop and not trees, but a crop. Can your system be adapted specifically for small farmers so that it gives them an advanced information that, okay, this is a time when your crop needs water from this or this quantity of water from this time to this time and things like that, depending on various parameters and various sensors which you may have put in the farm. Is that possible using your software? Can your software be adapted to use to do that?
So that's a fantastic question. And I think it asks a question at the heart of ag tech in general. There are no cookie cutter solutions. Challenges in a large scale farm of one crop are going to be different than a smaller scale farm of a different crop. And being able to build technologies that are able to serve at large scale, at small scale, and solve each and every individual problem of those farmers is essentially the challenge that all of us in the ag tech industry are looking to work on, as you know, us at C-Tree, as well as our colleagues here on the panel as well. And absolutely, we have customers who are farming, you know, just a few tens of acres up to some of the largest producers in the world, and being able to focus specifically on what each and every customer is looking to optimize for. While some might be looking to optimize irrigation, other might be looking to optimize labor and other challenges. And our approach is to essentially understand what are the greatest needs and areas of optimization that each grower is looking to work on, and be able to utilize our skill set and capabilities in order to help them get there. Great,
Yuri, because whenever we talk about digitization and digitalization, there is always a digital divide which exists, and therefore, what probably the proponents in Africa would be looking at is kind of downscaling this huge technology with lots of data which is required to go into it and all these analysis to much more simpler level, and then gradually move up higher up and attain that thing. But thank you for your presentation. It was very informative, and I hope that this would start giving ideas to our participants and whoever watches this webinar or follow this webinar to put up requests for technical assistance to CTCN on these kind of innovative technology solutions. Thank you once again. For sure. The last speaker of the day is Denis Macharia. Again, he is going to give a case study on the use of drone technology for adaptation planning and disaster and risk reduction. Denis, you can introduce yourself and you can share your presentation. Or do you want me to do that? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. My slides will be up shortly. While I wait for them, my name is Denis, and I work for an institution called the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development. We're based in Nairobi, Kenya, and we work for 20 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa. And our primary objective is to build the capacity for our member states to use satellites, remote sensing, GIS, and mapping and land surveying, for various, applications that that provide solutions to challenges that are experienced in various thematic areas, including agriculture and food security, land resources management in general, water resource management, forests, ecosystem, landscapes, as well as other cross-cutting areas. I am the weather and climate lead, and I'm also the project lead, or basically the team lead in this technical assistance to Eswatini. And I would like to take you through what we have done so far. We only began recently, and my team just came from Eswatini last week but one. Rajiv, please let me know when the slides are up and everyone can see them.
We can see this. We can see your slides. We can see the slides. Please move. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. I keep losing them.
Yeah, there is some problem. Do you mind if I share the screen and
please,
you just speak?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you please stop sharing your screen?
I'm trying to do that, but I don't know even how to do that now. I lost. Are you able to do? Okay, stop share. There we go. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, like I say, we put together a team to respond to this request from Eswatini, and this team only returned to Nairobi last week, but one where we flew drones for close to about 10 days or so, and we imaged 4 areas and across the country. And at the moment now, we are focusing on synthesizing or doing data analysis.
Is the screen visible to everyone?
Yeah, I can see it.
Can see.
Okay.
Yeah, so this technical assistance is supposed to build, strengthen the capacity of national stakeholders, with the leadership of the National Disaster Management Agency, and co-leadership from the national designated entity, which is in this case the Department of Meteorology, and several other line ministries or agencies that work together or closely on agricultural monitoring and disaster management. And we are hoping that, we are hoping that through this technical assistance, we can, one, enhance the capacity of these stakeholders to use UAV technology and remote sensing for crop monitoring and provision of timely early warning data to their users, who are mainly the beneficiary farmers. And we are also creating a baseline data set that we can, we are building in this pilot application, and that we are hoping it can form the basis upon which partners in Eswatini can operationally, utilize UAV technologies and remote sensing. And we hope, obviously, to scale up this innovation, and we hope that by the end of the technical assistance, we'll be able to submit, or the national agencies will be able to submit a global climate fund to upscale these technologies. Next. So the previous speakers, they have talked about the different areas that drones can be used. But I want to highlight those ones that are very relevant to what we are doing in Eswatini. At the moment, we are focusing on critical stages during the growing season. So this is at the stage where crops emerge from the ground, and then the growth stage, very key, because from here you can monitor several things. The progression of how the crops are performing with time, and also during the flowering stage, where most crop models can, with some good agreement, can forecast or can provide end of season outlooks or yield outlooks or production outlooks. So we hope that these technologies, when we combine the UAV with satellites, that we can strengthen this capacity that is not actually existing at the moment. And also at the harvest stage, then we can calibrate our models to be able to estimate nationally, the production. And during that phase, we are hoping that the case study that we are developing will provide the steps and the procedures and the processes and the tools that can help these agencies or these entities be able to implement these technologies without problems. But as a regional institution and as service provider to Eswatini, which is one of our member states, we intend to be present throughout the initial phases of strengthening this capacity. The next slide, I said we went out to Eswatini and we imaged 4 regions, those pins, the yellow pins on the map on the left. And we were able to image about 20 kilometers of square area using a fixed wing drone that is able to cover a larger area, and it has the capacity to fly even longer hours. But this Wingtra 1 fixed drone was procured from a constituent agency here in Kenya. And we complemented that with drones that are owned by one of the national agencies, that's the NDMA. And we hope that this complementary use of the 2 drones can provide potentially, the capacity for NDMA to continue using their 2 Phantom drones, DJI drones, as well as think about procurement of drones that can perform even better in terms of area imaging and also the type of camera sensors that drones carry. And we are doing this not generally by implementing services or this service from Nairobi. Next slide, Rajiv. But what we are doing is to actually work very closely with those national agencies to make sure that along the process, we are almost in I would want to call it a co-development approach, where we're working very closely, engaging with the agencies to first of all, understand the conditions on the ground, site selection, in this case for this pilot, as well as, taking them through, the operations or basic operations of a drone, what is required to be done, development of SOPs, development of flight paths and how to operationalize those flight paths in the field. And then we come back here, the capacity to process imagery, drone imagery, is limited in Eswatini. And so, we are doing most of the analysis from Nairobi because we have high capacity servers and computers to do that. But it is a capability or a capacity that we hope that eventually, once we have demonstrated in this pilot that these technologies are innovative and they work and they can help Eswatini in climate resilience, then we are going to deploy those other capacities that are required. Next, so that's mainly from the UAV side. What we are bringing into this TA, and this is the innovation, is to bring in satellites, or satellite data to complement the drone images. So drones cannot fly everywhere, every time, but they carry themselves cameras that can image at very high resolution, areas of particular interest. In this case, building this pilot, we are focused on high yielding areas and low yielding areas, and combining these with satellites to be able to, provide crop monitoring indicators at high resolution. So we are talking about vegetation indices, for instance, that give us vegetation health, conditions. But we're also hoping to build crop models that, mostly based on statistical modeling frameworks that can help us forecast end of season, cereal yields across the country. And this cannot be possible by use of UAV only. That's why we are bringing in the satellites, and also satellites across the country. We are able also to bring in several other indicators that we cannot capture or image with UAVs, like rainfall and soil moisture, etc. That current, at least I want to say, current UAV technology that we implement in Eswatini does not have that capability. So that's why we are bringing in the satellites. Plus satellites, they are more regular, they cover wide areas, but they have, relative to the drones, the most publicly available satellite data, are closer than what you would get with drones. And that's why we want to bring in those two capabilities together. So this is the far that we have come. It's very early still in this project. And we are hoping that in the next 3 or 4 months, at least, we are able to build this case study and we are able to demonstrate the usefulness of these technologies and the innovation for Eswatini. And in the long term, we are hoping to benefit farmers and vulnerable groups, especially that can benefit from this kind of technologies. So thank you very much. This is just a piece that was highlighted about our activity in the field, and we think it was a very good summary. Thank you, and looking forward to working with you. So.
Thank you, Denis. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we see 3 case studies which were presented, each with different kind of an application. I don't see. Means there is a question, and I think this is for Yuri, and Yuri. We have to play a video which we were not able to play before, so we expect your answer to be very short. And the technology which you have demonstrated or which you have shown, there is a question that how will it work on hydroponics and aquaponics in terms of water accuracy to the plant? Yuri, can you hear us? No. I don't see you. Yuri, can you hear us? Okay, I don't see. Yes, Yuri. Okay, Sim, maybe you can try to answer this question if you can. Please unmute yourself. Yes.
Yes, I did. So basically, using the app, you can take an image anywhere. So it also can be in a greenhouse, and it can also be hydroponic, anything like that. I'm not going to see anything that has to do with irrigation through the mobile app. The only thing that we're using for irrigation is the satellite multispectral, which we use the Airbus satellites that cover all of Africa pretty much once a week. And that gives us problem areas, mainly in irrigation and fertilizer. And then we can use the drone, or we can send the person out with the mobile app to go specifically to that place and see if it's an irrigation problem or a fertilizer issue.
Okay, great. If there, I know that it was very interesting presentation. There would be many questions, but please, we are going to reply to all the questions which are there in the chat box through through emails or post it on our website. I would like to make a last attempt to play the video recording for the keynote address. And this last trial would be not by me, but my colleague, Valentin. Valentin, can you please play?
Excuse me, Rajiv.
Perfect.
To all participants. According to the UNEP emission gap report, despite a brief dip in carbon dioxide emission caused by COVID-19 pandemic, the world is still heading for a temperature rise in excess of 3 degrees Celsius this century, far beyond the Paris Agreement goals of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursuing 1.5 degrees Celsius. While Africa has contributed negligibly to changing climate with just about 2 or 3% of global emissions. It stands out disproportionately as the most vulnerable region of the globe. Projected reduction in yield in some countries could be as much as 50% by 2020, and crop net revenue could fall by as much as 90% by 2100, with small-scale farmers being the most affected. This would adversely affect food security in the continent. This vulnerability is driven by the prevailing low levels of socioeconomic growth in the continent. The relationship between climate change and social inequality is a vicious cycle where the disadvantaged group get more exposed to the adverse effect of climate change, and thus damage caused by climate hazard are stronger, while the capacity to cope and recover are weaker. This is because they lack the resources to afford goods and services they need to buffer themselves and recover from the worst of the changing climate effect. This is the case in Africa. Technological change is undoubtedly one of the keys to ensuring that climate change can be addressed without compromising economic growth. In order for this to be the case, it is vitally important that climate and innovation policies provide the right incentives for the development and diffusion of climate-friendly technologies. As per the recent Technology and Innovation Report by UNCTAD, recent development in frontier technologies, including artificial intelligence, robotic, and biotechnology, have shown tremendous potential for climate change and sustainable development. Yet, they also risk increasing inequality by exacerbating and creating new digital divides between the technology haves and have-nots. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exposed this dichotomy. Technology has been a critical tool for addressing the spread of the disease, but not everyone has equal access to the benefits. Nonetheless, technology is rarely a solution on its own. Problems such as poverty, hunger, climate change, or inequalities in health or education are inevitably complex and multidimensional. Technology are likely to have an effect on disparities, but inequalities can also shape so that they reflect, reproduce, and perhaps amplify systemic bias and discrimination. Currently, most technology are created by firms in the global north and predominantly by men. They tend to focus on the demand on the rich, crowding out innovation that might benefit the poor. Technological change is also shaped by gender inequalities, and this case is more profound for the Africa region. Women are responsible for 60% of work done globally, yet earn just 10% income and 1% of property. In Africa, 70% of women are excluded financially. The continent has a $42 billion gap in financing between men and women. Specifically for Africa, the government should strive to provide long-term political signal in order to give potential innovators and adapters of climate-friendly technologies the confidence to undertake the necessary investment. It is important to use the flexibility of policy measures to give the potential innovator incentives to identify the best way to meet climate objectives, to avoid locking in technologies that may become inefficient in the future. The African countries should increasingly adopt and establish national system of innovation to catch up with the technology revolution. The system that underlies the process that influenced the development, diffusion, and use of innovation, for example, where innovation is the commercial introduction of a technology that is new to the world or new to the region or application. The international community should support Africa countries in development of policies and strategies for supporting grassroots innovation. Grassroots innovation emerges when individuals and communities attempt to experiment and devise solutions to their needs. They evolve in sectors and space left void by market mechanism, where market solution may be unavailable or unaffordable to communities and individuals, and where public infrastructure and support is limited. This would greatly benefit community-based climate change adaptation. Further, there is a need to provide an appropriate mix and sequencing of complementary measures in order to overcome barriers to development and diffusion of breakthrough technologies. The portfolio of technology for which support is provided should be diversified by identifying general purpose technologies with environmental benefits. African countries generally have small and restrictive markets. The fruit of technological advancement and efficient products are generally not able to reach this market before delaying the penetration of technologies to them. The countries in Africa should strive to remove this restriction through opening market and removing trade barriers which impede the transfer of technology. This can be done through harmonization of policies and product standards on a regional or sub-regional basis. Market aggregation will lead to enhanced interest of the private sector players and would also result in affordable prices for goods and services due to economics of scales. Finally, since the sources of innovation are widely dispersed, the international community should support research and development in a broad portfolio of complementary fields and not just energy or climate-friendly or environmental R&D. Some of these issues will be discussed during the COP26 in Glasgow. We look forward for fruitful negotiation and hope that the outcome of this will lead to more international commitment and support for in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valentin. Finally, we were able to play this this message. I would open the floor. Means I again don't see any questions. We have exceeded the time limit of 2 hours, which we have set for ourselves by 6 minutes. But still, I would like to give the floor for any last-minute intervention by Rose or by Tim, who are there in the meeting.
Thank you, Rajiv. I don't really have any questions to ask. I think I just want to reiterate the point that my colleagues have made in the chat, that we may have closed the call for AFCIA, but because we want to really enhance the work we do on adaptation, please feel free to reach out to us. Send an email. We'll be happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you. We have a lot of experts in this area working with us, and one of my colleagues will be able to reach out to you. So please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. That's what I'd like to say. Rajiv, do you want?
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Rose, and thank you all colleagues for attending this webinar. This webinar would be is recorded, and it would be placed and it would be put on the CTCN website. You can access this webinar along with all the slides, all the slide presentations and question and answers. If there are any unanswered questions, we'll make efforts to reply to them either individually or in a group fashion. we look forward to work more closely with you, with the project proponents in the future. Thank you very much, and have a very nice and a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and bye.
Bye.
Bye.